Dr. Hana pushed her tired eyes away from the glowing screen and rubbed her temples. She had been working for 12 hours straight, trying to decode the strange symbols carved into the ancient stone tablet. The research station orbiting Kepler 442b was quiet during the night shift, with only the soft hum of the life support systems breaking the silence. The tablet sat on her desk, its dark surface covered in the flowing script of the builders. These mysterious beings had once ruled most of the galaxy, leaving behind massive cities and strange technology on hundreds of worlds. Then, about 10,000 years ago, they had simply vanished. No one knew why or how such a powerful civilization could disappear so completely. Hana picked up her translation device and pointed it at another section of the tablet. The machine beeped softly and displayed its best guess at the meaning. She frowned as she read the words on her screen. The Death Walkers came from the void between stars. They breathed poison and walked through fire. Nothing could stop them. Nothing could kill them. They made friends with our enemies and turned our weapons into tools of peace. She shook her head and made notes in her computer. This was the 15th reference to these Death Walkers she had found in builder artifacts over the past month. The descriptions were always strange and frightening, but they never made much sense. The builders wrote about creatures that could survive in any environment, beings who fought without mercy but also showed impossible kindness. The most disturbing part was how the builders described these creatures' ability to form bonds with other species. According to the texts, the Death Walkers could make emotional connections with anyone or anything. They would risk their lives to protect complete strangers. They would even try to save their enemies. The door to Hana's lab slid open with a soft hiss. Dr. Minho walked in carrying 2 cups of hot coffee. He was her oldest friend on the station and the only person who would stay up this late to keep her company during her research. "Still working on those monster stories?" Minho asked, setting 1 cup next to her tablet. He looked at her screen and shook his head. "Hana, you know these are just myths, right? Every civilization has scary stories they tell their children." Hana took a sip of her coffee and gestured at the tablet. "But these aren't children's stories, Minho. These are official builder records. Look at the writing style. Look at the detail. These read like scientific reports." Minho sat down in the chair next to her desk. "Scientific reports about creatures that can breathe poison and walk through fire? Come on, Hana. You're smarter than this." "The builders call them humans," Hana said, pointing to a symbol that appeared repeatedly in the text. "And every reference I find makes them sound more real, not less." She pulled up her research files on her computer. The screen filled with dozens of images of builder artifacts, all containing references to these mysterious humans. Stone carvings showed tall, bipedal figures with unusual body proportions. Metal plates described their strange biology and impossible behavior patterns. "Look at this," Hana said, selecting one of her favorite examples. "This tablet talks about humans who survived in the vacuum of space for several minutes while repairing a damaged ship. This one describes humans eating food that would poison any other species. And this one..." She paused and selected another file. "This one says humans once convinced a pack of predators to become vegetarians." Minho laughed and shook his head. "You're proving my point, Hana. These stories are impossible. They're just scary tales the builders told to entertain themselves or frighten their enemies." But Hana wasn't listening anymore. She had found something new in the tablet's translation. The machine had just decoded a section she hadn't been able to read before. Her eyes widened as she read the text that appeared on her screen. "The humans came to us during the Great Dying. We feared them at first, for the stories said they were destroyers of worlds, but they did not come to conquer. They came to heal. They brought medicines we could not understand and tools we could not build. They saved millions of our people, asking nothing in return but friendship." "Minho," Hana said quietly. "Look at this." He leaned over and read the translation. His smile faded as he continued reading. The text went on to describe how these humans had worked alongside builder scientists to cure a terrible disease that was killing entire planets. It talked about human doctors who risked their own lives to save builder children. It described human engineers who built impossible machines using technology from dozens of different species. "This doesn't sound like a monster story," Minho said slowly. Hana nodded and pulled up another file. "And it's not the only one. I've been finding more and more references like this. The early builder texts describe humans as terrifying warriors and unstoppable killers. But the later texts tell a different story. They talk about humans as healers and protectors. She showed him image after image of builder art depicting humans. The early pictures showed dark, frightening figures with glowing eyes and sharp teeth. But the later artwork was completely different. It showed humans working peacefully alongside builders, teaching builder children, and helping to build great cities. What if the humans weren't myths at all? Hana asked. What if they were real, and the builders just didn't understand them at first? Minho was quiet for a long moment, studying the images on Hana's screen. If that's true, he said finally, then what happened to them? Why did they disappear along with the builders? Hana had been wondering the same thing. She had spent weeks searching through builder archives for any clue about what had happened to both civilizations. The builder texts suddenly stopped 10,000 years ago, right in the middle of what seemed to be a golden age of cooperation between the two species. I think I might know where to find the answer, she said, pulling up a star chart on her computer. 3 months ago, a survey team found a massive builder facility on the edge of the galaxy. It's bigger than anything we've ever discovered, and the preliminary scans show it's still partially active. She pointed to a small dot on the star chart. The facility is here, in the Void Reach sector. It's too far for most research ships, but if we could get permission to take the Deep Space Explorer— Hana, Minho interrupted. That sector is restricted. The Galactic Council doesn't allow civilian ships to go that far out. But this could be the discovery of a lifetime, Hana said, her excitement growing. Think about what we might find there. Complete builder archives, maybe even evidence of what really happened to the humans. Minho looked at the star chart and then back at his friend. He could see the determination in her eyes. When Hana believed in something, she didn't give up easily. You really think these humans were real? He asked. Hana looked down at the tablet on her desk. The ancient stone seemed to glow softly in the light from her computer screen. She thought about all the builder texts she had translated, all the impossible stories that might not be stories at all. I think the builders were trying to warn us about something, she said quietly. But not in the way we think. They weren't warning us about monsters. They were trying to tell us about the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. Dangerous how? Hana smiled and looked back at her research. Dangerous because they make everyone around them want to be better. Dangerous because they never give up on anyone. Dangerous because they believe that every life is worth saving, even if it costs them everything. She saved her work and stood up from her chair. I'm going to request permission to visit that facility, Minho. Even if it takes months to get approval. I need to know what really happened to the humans. As she gathered her notes and prepared to leave the lab, Hana couldn't shake the feeling that she was on the verge of discovering something that would change everything. The builders hadn't vanished mysteriously. They had left behind a message, written in stone and metal across hundreds of worlds. The humans were real, and somewhere out there in the vast darkness of space, they might still be waiting to come home. Captain Jiwon stared at the readings on her ship's main screen and felt her blood turn cold. The object floating in space ahead of them was definitely artificial, but it didn't match any known ship design in the galactic database. Worse, it was drifting near the edge of the galaxy, in a region where no intelligent species was supposed to exist. Distance to the unknown vessel? She asked her navigation officer. 2,000 kilometers and closing, Captain, replied Lieutenant Yuna. The ship appears to be powerless and drifting. Jiwon looked around the bridge of the Star of Andromeda. Her crew of 12 had been exploring the outer regions of the galaxy for 6 months, mapping new star systems and looking for signs of ancient civilizations. They had expected to find empty space and dead planets. They had not expected to find a mysterious ship that shouldn't exist. What do our sensors tell us about the vessel? Jiwon asked. Dr. Kyung, the ship's science officer, looked up from his instruments. Captain, this is the strangest thing I've ever seen. The ship's hull appears to be made from at least 15 different types of metal. Some of these alloys shouldn't be able to exist in the same structure without breaking apart. He brought up a detailed scan on the main screen. The unknown ship was about twice the size of their own vessel, but its design was completely chaotic. Different sections seemed to have been built using different technologies. Parts of the hull looked like builder architecture, while other sections resembled Zentari engineering. Still, other parts were made from materials that didn't match anything in their database. It looks like someone took pieces from dozens of different ships and somehow welded them together, Dr. Kyung continued. But that should be impossible. These different technologies aren't compatible. Jiwon studied the image on the screen. The ship looked like it had been repaired many times using whatever materials were available. Patches covered holes in the hull. Mismatched components were connected by thick cables and support beams. It was ugly and wrong, but somehow it held together. "Are there any life signs aboard the vessel?" she asked. Dr. Kyung checked his readings. "I'm detecting 3 very faint life signs, Captain. They appear to be in some kind of hibernation or deep sleep. The power levels are so low that I'm surprised the life support systems are still working." Jiwon felt her hands tighten on the arms of her captain's chair. Every protocol in the book said they should mark the location of the ship and report it to Galactic Council authorities. Unknown vessels in unexplored space were always dangerous. But her scientific curiosity was stronger than her caution. "Can we dock with the ship safely?" she asked. Her engineer, Chief Min-jae, ran the docking calculations on his computer. "It's possible, Captain. The ship has what looks like a standard docking port, though it's been modified with components I don't recognize." Jiwon made her decision. "We're going aboard. Dr. Kyung, prepare a full scientific survey kit. Chief Min-jae, I want you to analyze their technology. Everyone else, standard exploration protocols. And remember, we have no idea what we're dealing with here." 2 hours later, Jiwon floated through the docking tunnel that connected her ship to the mysterious vessel. She wore a full environmental suit and carried enough equipment to survive in any hostile environment. Behind her, Dr. Kyung and Chief Min-jae followed with their own equipment packs. The airlock of the unknown ship opened easily, but the air inside was thin and cold. Their suit's sensors showed that the atmosphere was breathable but barely adequate for most known species. Emergency lighting flickered along the walls, casting strange shadows in the narrow corridors. "Captain," Dr. Kyung said, his voice crackling through the suit radio, "I'm reading some very unusual atmospheric readings. The air contains trace amounts of at least 12 different gases that most species would find toxic." They moved deeper into the ship, following the layout maps that Dr. Kyung's scanners were creating in real time. The corridors were cramped and filled with pipes and cables that seemed to have been added after the ship was built. Everything looked like it had been repaired or modified multiple times. "This is incredible," Chief Min-jae said, stopping to examine a power junction. "They've somehow connected a Velish fusion reactor to a Zentari power distribution system using builder control circuits. This should have exploded the moment they turned it on. But it hadn't exploded. Somehow, the impossible combination of technologies was working. The ship was alive, keeping its passengers safe in the cold darkness of space. They found the hibernation chamber near the center of the ship. 3 pods sat in a row, each one glowing softly with internal lights. The pods themselves looked like they had been built from parts of several different hibernation systems. Zentari status displays were connected to Velish life support units and builder power supplies. Dr. Kyung approached the first pod and checked his scanner readings. "Captain, these life signs don't match any known species in our database. The biological readings are unusual." He brought up the scan results on his portable display. The creatures in the pods were roughly humanoid but with strange proportions. Their bone density was much higher than normal, suggesting they had evolved on a high-gravity world. Their muscle mass was unusually distributed, and their internal organs were arranged in ways that didn't match any known biology. "Their brain activity is fascinating," Dr. Kyung continued. "Even in hibernation, their neural patterns show incredible complexity. And their blood chemistry. Captain, they have adaptation genes that I've never seen before. It's like their bodies can change to survive in different environments." Jiwon looked at the 3 sleeping figures through the transparent covers of their pods. They looked peaceful, almost fragile, but something about them made her feel nervous, in a way she couldn't explain. "How long have they been asleep?" she asked. Dr. Kyung checked the pod's status displays. "Based on the power consumption and the hibernation cycle data, I'd estimate at least several hundred years, maybe longer." "Captain," Chief Min-jae called from across the chamber, "you need to see this." He was standing next to a wall covered with images and text in dozens of different languages. Some of the writing looked like builder script, Other sections were in Zentari mathematical notation. Still others were in languages that none of them recognized. "What is it?" Jiwan asked, walking over to examine the wall. "I think it's a message," Chief Minjae said. "Or maybe a history. Look at these images." The wall showed pictures of the three sleeping beings working alongside members of many different species. There were images of them building machines, healing the sick, and teaching children. In every picture, they were helping others or working together to solve problems. But there were also darker images, pictures of great ships fleeing through space, images of dying planets and empty cities, and at the end, pictures of the three beings entering their hibernation pods while their ship drifted away from a galaxy filled with darkness. "They're refugees," Dr. Kyung said quietly. "Something happened to their people, and they've been searching for a new home." Jiwan studied the images more carefully. The beings in the pictures looked exactly like the ones sleeping in the pods. But there was something else, something that made her stomach tighten with fear. In every image, other species were looking at these beings with expressions of awe and gratitude. Even their enemies seemed to respect them. "Dr. Kyung," she said slowly, "run a comparison between these biological readings and any legends or myths in our database." He worked at his scanner for several minutes, cross-referencing the life sign data with historical records. When the results appeared on his screen, his face went pale. "Captain," he whispered, I think these might be humans." The word hung in the air like a curse. Every child in the galaxy knew the stories about humans, the mythical creatures who could survive anything, who fought without fear, and who could make friends with their worst enemies. The beings who were so dangerous that they had supposedly destroyed entire civilizations just by existing. "That's impossible," Jiwan said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Humans are just stories. They're not real." As if responding to her words, one of the hibernation pods began to beep softly. Status lights flickered from blue to yellow to green. The hibernation cycle was ending. "Captain," Dr. Kyung said urgently, "the first pod is beginning its wake-up sequence. We should leave now, before—" "Before what?" Jiwan asked, but she couldn't take her eyes off the pod. The transparent cover began to rise with a soft hiss of escaping air. Inside, the sleeping figure stirred and opened her eyes. She was young, with dark hair and features that looked almost familiar despite being completely alien. She sat up slowly, looking around the chamber with confusion. When her eyes found the three suited figures standing nearby, she smiled. It was not the smile of a predator or a monster. It was the smile of someone who was genuinely happy to see other people after a long, lonely journey. She raised one hand in what was clearly meant to be a friendly greeting. "Hello," she said in perfect galactic standard, though her voice was rough from the long sleep. "I'm Sola. Are you here to help us?" Jiwan felt every instinct screaming at her to run. If this creature really was a human, then she was looking at the most dangerous being in the galaxy. Commander Deho stood behind 6 inches of reinforced transparent steel and watched the most dangerous creature in the galaxy eat breakfast. The human named Sola sat at a simple metal table in her containment cell, carefully cutting her food into small pieces with plastic utensils. She had been awake for 3 days now, and she had been nothing but polite and cooperative. That was what worried him the most. The Titan Research Station was the most secure facility in Galactic Council space. Built inside a hollow asteroid, it was designed to contain the most dangerous specimens and artifacts in the galaxy. The station's containment cells could hold creatures that could punch through solid steel or survive in the vacuum of space. The walls were lined with energy dampeners and force field generators. But none of those defenses had been designed to stop something like a human. "How are our guests this morning?" Dr. Sunwoo asked, walking up beside him with a cup of coffee and a data pad. Deho looked at his chief science officer. Dr. Sunwoo had been studying Sola for the past 3 days, and he had noticed changes in her behavior. She was becoming more relaxed around the human, more willing to spend extra time in the containment area talking with her subject. "They're fine," Deho said carefully. "Too fine. They should be angry about being locked up. They should be demanding to know where they are or trying to escape. Instead, they act like this is some kind of vacation resort. Through the observation window, they could see Sola finishing her meal. When she was done, she carefully cleaned her utensils and placed them neatly on the food tray. Then she walked over to the window and waved at them with a bright smile. "Good. Morning, Dr. Sunwoo," Sola called out, her voice carried by the intercom system. "Good morning, Commander Daeho. I hope you both slept well." Dr. Sunwoo waved back automatically before catching herself. "See what I mean?" she said to Daeho. "It's impossible not to like her. She remembers everyone's names, she asks about our families, and she never complains about anything." "That's exactly the problem," Daeho replied. "According to the legends, humans are supposed to be master manipulators. Maybe this is how they work. They make you like them first." But even as he said it, Daeho didn't really believe it. He had been watching security footage of all three humans around the clock. Sola, Taemin, and Bora were being kept in separate cells with no contact between them, but their behavior was remarkably similar. They were all friendly, curious, and helpful. They answered every question the research teams asked them. They participated, willingly, in every test. When the medical team needed blood samples, the humans had volunteered extra amounts so the doctors could run more complete tests. When the engineering team wanted to study their ship's technology, Taemin had provided detailed explanations of how every system worked. When the xenobiology team asked about human culture, Bora had spent hours telling stories and drawing pictures of life on their homeworld. "Commander," Security Chief Inwoo's voice crackled over the communication system. "We have a problem in Containment Cell 3. Daeho's hand moved automatically to his weapon. "What kind of problem?" "It's not what you think, sir. The human Taemin is asking to speak with you personally. He says it's urgent." Daeho frowned and walked quickly through the station corridors to Containment Cell 3. Through the observation window, he could see Taemin sitting calmly on his bunk. The human was young, probably in his 20s, with the same dark hair and unusual proportions as the other two. He looked up when Daeho approached and gestured for him to activate the intercom. "Commander Daeho," Taemin said politely. "Thank you for coming. I'm sorry to bother you, but I think your station might be in danger." "What kind of danger?" Taemin stood up and walked to the window. "I've been listening to the sounds your ship makes, and something is wrong with your main reactor. The harmonic frequency is shifting in a way that suggests a containment field instability." Daeho stared at the human. "How could you possibly know that?" "Humans are good at recognizing patterns," Taemin explained. "We had to be to survive on our homeworld. I can hear the difference in the reactor's hum. If I'm right, you probably have about 6 hours before the containment field fails completely." "That's impossible," Security Chief Inwoo said. "Our engineering team would have detected any reactor problems." But Daeho was already pulling out his communicator and calling Chief Engineer Namjoon. "Chief, I need you to run a complete diagnostic on the main reactor containment field. Check the harmonic resonance patterns for the last 72 hours. There was a pause before the chief engineer's voice came back over the comm. "Commander, how did you know?" "We're showing early signs of field degradation. At current rates, we'll have a complete failure in about 6 hours. Daeho felt his blood run cold. A reactor containment failure would destroy the entire station and everyone on it. "Can you fix it?" "Not with current supplies, sir. We'd need to shut down the reactor completely and replace 3 major components, but we don't have the right parts on board." Taemin cleared his throat politely. "Commander, if I may make a suggestion, I think I might be able to help." "Help how?" "Humans are very good at fixing things with whatever materials are available," Taemin explained. "It's one of our survival traits. If you could show me your engineering specifications and your parts, inventory, I might be able to find a solution." Daeho looked at Security Chief Inwoo, who shook his head firmly. "Sir, we can't let a prisoner have access to critical station systems. It could be a trick." "What if it's not?" Daeho asked. "What if he really can help? Then we're asking the most dangerous creature in the galaxy to save our lives," Inwoo replied. "That's exactly the kind of situation the legends warn us about." But Daeho was thinking about the 600 people on board the station. If the reactor failed, they would all die. He had to make a choice between following protocol and protecting his crew. "Bring him to engineering," he ordered. "Full security escort. If he tries anything suspicious, stun him immediately." 20 minutes later, Taemin stood in the station's main engineering section, surrounded by armed guards. Chief Engineer Namjoon had provided him with detailed schematics of the reactor and a complete inventory of available spare parts. The human studied the information for several minutes, occasionally asking questions about specific components. "I think I see the problem," Taman said finally. "Your containment field generators are designed to work in perfect harmony, but one of them is slightly out of phase. The resonance feedback is creating a cascade failure in the other generators. Can you fix it?" Chief Namjoon asked. "Not with the parts you have," Taman admitted. "But I can build something that will work. You have 3 damaged power regulators in your spare parts inventory. Individually, they're useless. But if I connect them in a specific pattern with some modifications, they can function as a temporary containment field stabilizer." "That's impossible," Chief Namjoon said. "Those regulators are completely incompatible with our reactor design." Taman smiled. "That's what makes it possible. The incompatibility creates a natural buffer against harmonic resonance. It's ugly and inefficient, but it will work long enough for you to get proper replacement parts." For the next 4 hours, Daeho watched in amazement as the human worked alongside his engineering team. Taman's hands moved with incredible precision as he modified circuits and reconfigured power systems. He seemed to understand how every component worked, even though he had never seen their technology before. More importantly, he explained everything he was doing. He taught Chief Namjoon how to monitor the temporary repairs and warned him about potential problems to watch for. He even suggested improvements to their reactor design that would prevent similar failures in the future. "There," Taman said finally, stepping back from his work. "The containment field should be stable now. The temporary fix will hold for several months, long enough for you to get proper replacement parts." Chief Namjoon checked his instruments and smiled. "Containment field is stable and holding. Harmonic resonance is back to normal levels." He looked at Taman with obvious admiration. "How did you know how to do that?" "Practice," Taman said simply. "Humans have been fixing impossible things for a long time." As the security team escorted Taman back to his cell, Daeho found himself thinking about what he had just witnessed. The human hadn't tried to escape or sabotage anything. He had simply solved their problem and asked for nothing in return. When Daeho had thanked him, Taman had seemed genuinely confused, as if helping others was just something he did naturally. That evening, Daeho sat in his office reviewing the day's events. Dr. Sunwoo knocked on his door and entered with her daily report on the human subjects. "How are they doing?" he asked. "Better than we are," Dr. Sunwoo replied. "Sola has been asking about our families and offering to help with whatever work we're doing. Bora has been teaching our junior staff members songs from her homeworld, and now Taman has saved the entire station." She set her datapad on his desk and looked out the window toward the containment cells. "Commander, I don't think these are the monsters from the legends. I think the legends got it wrong." Daeho nodded slowly. "I'm starting to think you're right, but if they're not monsters, then what are they?" "I think they're exactly what they appear to be," Dr. Sunwoo said. Archivist Soman stared at the massive builder facility floating in the darkness ahead of her ship. The structure was enormous, easily the size of a small moon, and it was still partially active after 10,000 years. Strange lights pulsed along its surface in patterns that seemed almost like a heartbeat. "Incredible," Dr. Junsu whispered from the seat beside her. "I've never seen anything like it." Soman nodded, unable to speak. She had spent 3 months convincing the Galactic Council to approve this expedition to the Void Reach sector. When news had broken about the discovery of living humans, the Council had finally agreed that understanding builder history was more important than maintaining the travel restrictions. "Scanning for docking ports," announced their pilot. "I'm reading at least 20 different entry points, but most of them appear to be designed for ships much larger than ours." "Try docking port 7, Soman said, checking her notes. "The preliminary survey team said it looked like it was designed for smaller research vessels." As their ship approached the ancient facility, Soman felt her excitement growing. She had spent her entire career studying the fall of great civilizations, but she had never had access to a facility this complete. If the builder archives here were intact, they might finally learn what had really happened 10,000 years ago. The docking was successful, and within an hour, Somin and Dr. Junsu were walking through corridors that hadn't seen visitors in millennia. Their environmental suits were necessary because the facility's atmosphere had been designed for builders, not humans. But the artificial gravity was still working, and emergency lighting flickered on as they moved through the massive structure. The architecture is incredible, Dr. Junsu said, running his scanner over the walls. These materials should have degraded thousands of years ago, but they're still in perfect condition. Soman was more interested in the symbols carved into every surface. Builder script covered the walls, telling stories and recording information in their flowing musical language. But there was something different about these inscriptions. They seemed more urgent somehow, more emotional than the formal builder texts she was used to reading. "This way," she said, following the signs toward what her translation software identified as the main archive center. The archive chamber was breathtaking. It was a vast, circular room with thousands of data storage units arranged in concentric rings around a central platform. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing star charts and historical records. Most importantly, everything was still active. "The power systems are still working," Dr. Junsu said in amazement. "After all this time, the archives are still online." Soman approached the central control platform and placed her hands on the interface panels. The builder language was complex, but she had been studying it for 20 years. After several minutes of careful work, she managed to access the facility's main database. "What are you looking for specifically?" Dr. Junsu asked. "References to humans," Somin replied, typing commands into the ancient computer system. "If the builders really encountered humans 10,000 years ago, there should be records here." Search results appeared on the holographic displays around them. Hundreds of files, thousands of images, and detailed scientific reports about human biology, behavior, and technology. Soman's eyes widened as she realized the scope of the data. "This isn't just a few scattered references," she said quietly. "This is a complete scientific archive about human civilization." She opened the first file and began to read. It was a builder exploration report from 10,050 years ago, describing first contact with a human colony ship. The report was written in the formal, scientific style typical of builder records, but Soman could sense the fear and confusion in the author's words. "The creatures called themselves humans and claimed to come from a world they named Earth," she read aloud. "They appeared to be suffering from some form of biological contamination, as many of their number were ill with a disease we could not identify. Despite their obvious weakness, they offered to share their medical knowledge with us in exchange for basic supplies." Dr. Junsu looked over her shoulder as she continued reading. "The humans possessed technology that defied our understanding. Their ship appeared to be constructed from components of at least 12 different civilizations, yet somehow functioned perfectly. When we asked how this was possible, they explained that they had learned to make do with what they had." "Keep reading," Dr. Junsu urged. Soman opened file after file, each one revealing more about the relationship between humans and builders. The early reports were cautious and fearful, describing humans as unpredictable and potentially dangerous. But as time went on, the tone of the reports changed dramatically. "Look at this," she said, opening a file dated 50 years after first contact. "This is a builder medical report about a plague that was killing their people. According to this, human doctors worked alongside builder scientists to develop a cure. The report described how humans had risked their own lives to treat builder patients, even though the plague might have been deadly to humans as well. It talked about human medical techniques that seemed impossible but somehow worked. Most importantly, it described how humans refused any payment for their help, saying that saving lives was reward enough. They didn't just help with medical problems," Dr. Junsu said, opening another file. "Look at this engineering report. The humans helped the builders design new types of starships that could travel faster and more efficiently than anything they had built before." Soman read over his shoulder. The report described human engineers who could look at any piece of technology and immediately understand how to improve it. They could take components from completely different civilizations and somehow make them work together. Most amazingly, they shared all of their knowledge freely with anyone who wanted to learn. "This doesn't match the legends at all," Soman said. "The stories make humans sound like conquerors and destroyers, but these reports describe them as healers and teachers." She opened a file that contained thousands of images of humans working alongside builders. The pictures showed humans and Builders building cities together, exploring new worlds together, and raising families together. In every image, the humans looked happy and peaceful. But then Soman found something that made her blood run cold. It was a series of reports from the final years of the Builder civilization, and they told a very different story. Dr. Junsu, she called urgently. You need to see this. She had found the records of what the Builders called the Great Dying. A terrible plague had begun spreading across the galaxy, killing entire populations of dozens of different species. The disease was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. It attacked the genetic structure of its victims, making it impossible to develop immunity or resistance. According to these reports, Somin said, the plague was spreading so fast that entire civilizations were going extinct within months of exposure. The Builders were dying by the billions. What did they do? Soman opened the final series of files. They asked the humans for help. The records described how humans from across the galaxy had come together to fight the plague. Human scientists worked without sleep for months, trying to understand the disease. Human doctors traveled to infected worlds, risking their own lives to treat the dying. Human engineers built massive medical facilities and research stations. In record time, they found a cure. Soman read from a report written by a Builder scientist named Harmony of Understanding. The humans discovered that the plague could be stopped, but only through a genetic modification that would alter the basic DNA structure of every species in the galaxy. Dr. Junsu leaned closer. What kind of modification? Soman continued reading, her voice growing quieter as she understood the full horror of what had happened. The cure required the humans to sacrifice their own genetic compatibility with their homeworld. By modifying their DNA to create the cure, they would no longer be able to survive on Earth or any world with Earth-like conditions. They had to choose between saving the galaxy and saving themselves, Dr. Junsu said quietly. And they chose to save the galaxy, Soman replied. The final reports described how the humans had distributed the cure to every inhabited world, saving billions of lives across hundreds of species. But the cost had been enormous. The genetic modifications meant that humans could no longer return to their home world. Worse, their modified DNA was slowly breaking down, making it impossible for them to reproduce successfully. The humans built a fleet of generation ships, Soman read from the last Builder record. They took samples of their original DNA and placed volunteers in hibernation, hoping that someday they might find a way to reverse the modifications and restore their species. She found the final entry in the archive, written by a Builder chronicler, named Echo of Memory. The author described watching human ships leave the galaxy, carrying the last survivors of their race in hibernation pods. We owe them everything, the chronicler had written. They saved us all, asking nothing in return but our friendship. We offered them worlds to colonize, resources to rebuild their civilization, even our own technology to help them survive. But they refused everything except basic supplies for their journey. The entry continued. President Nari stood at the center of the Galactic Council chamber and looked out at the representatives of 300 different worlds. The great circular hall was filled with beings from every corner of the galaxy, all waiting to hear her decision about the most important vote in galactic history. 3 months had passed since Archivist Soman had returned from the Builder facility with proof that humans were real and that they had once saved the galaxy. 3 months since the truth about the ancient legends had spread across every inhabited world. And 3 months since a massive human generation ship had appeared at the edge of Council space, asking for help. The facts are clear, Nari said, her voice carrying through the chamber's translation systems. 10,000 years ago, humans sacrificed their own civilization to save ours. They cured a plague that would have destroyed every species in the galaxy, and they asked for nothing in return except our friendship. She gestured toward the main display screen, which showed images from the Builder archives. Pictures of humans and Builders working together, human doctors treating alien patients, and human engineers sharing their knowledge with anyone who wanted to learn. Now they have returned, Nari continued. Their generation ship, the New Horizon, carries 50,000 humans in hibernation. These are the descendants of the heroes who saved us all, and they are dying. The display changed to show technical reports from the human ship. After 10,000 years of travel through deep space, their systems were failing. Their jury-rigged technology, maintained across centuries by skeleton crews, was finally breaking down beyond repair. "They have found a suitable world to colonize," Nari said. "A planet in the Kepler system that can support human life. But they lack the resources to establish a permanent settlement. They are not asking for charity. They are offering trade." A murmur went through the chamber as the display showed the human technology demonstrations that had been conducted over the past month. Captain Wanho of the New Horizon had amazed Council engineers by taking broken components from dozens of different species and somehow making them work together. "The humans possess something that we have lost," Nari said. "The ability to make any technology work with any other technology. They can take our most incompatible systems and create solutions. That should be impossible." She had seen the demonstrations herself. Captain Wanho had taken a damaged Zentari communicator, a broken Velish power core, and random spare parts from 6 different species. In 20 minutes, he had built a universal translator that could work across quantum frequencies. The device was ugly and cobbled together, but it functioned better than anything in the Council's arsenal. "More importantly," Nari continued, "they offer us something even more valuable. They offer us hope." The chamber fell silent as she spoke. Over the past 3 months, human medical teams had been working with Council doctors to study the breakdown of the ancient plague cure. The genetic modifications that humans had made 10,000 years ago were indeed failing, exactly as the Builder records had predicted. "Our scientists estimate that we have perhaps 50 years before the plague returns," Nari said. "Without human help, billions will die just as they did 10,000 years ago. The humans have offered to work with us to develop a new cure, one that will not require the same terrible sacrifice they made before." Representative Kwan of the Zentari Confederation raised his hand to speak. "President Nari, how can we be sure that these humans are really the same species described in the Builder records? How do we know this isn't some elaborate deception?" Nari had expected this question. "Because they have shown us who they are through their actions, not their words." She gestured to the display, which now showed security footage from the Titan research station. When Commander Daho's reactor was failing, the human Taman risked his own safety to save 600 strangers. When Dr. Sunwoo was injured in a lab accident, the human Sola donated her own blood for a transfusion, even though she didn't know if human blood was compatible with our biology. The footage continued, showing dozens of examples of humans helping their captors and guards. They had shared their food with hungry workers, taught languages to curious scientists, and even helped repair equipment that had nothing to do with their own welfare. "Most importantly," Nari said, "they have shown us the same thing their ancestors showed the Builders 10,000 years ago. They have shown us that they care more about helping others than about helping themselves." Representative Yuki of the Velish Union stood up. "What exactly are they asking for in return?" Captain Wanho had been waiting in the observer section of the chamber. Now he stood up and walked to the center of the hall. He was a tall, lean man with graying hair and kind eyes. He wore a simple uniform that had been patched and repaired many times during the long journey. "We ask for citizenship," he said simply. "We ask for a place to call home. We ask for the chance to live and work alongside you as equals." "And in return?" Representative Yuki asked. "We offer everything we have," Captain Wanho replied. "Our knowledge, our technology, our medical expertise, and our promise to help defend this galaxy against any threat that might arise." He paused and looked around the chamber. 10,000 years ago, my ancestors chose to save strangers at the cost of their own civilization. We would make the same choice today because that is what humans do. We protect those who cannot protect themselves, and we never give up on anyone. Representative Chen of the Talonite Empire spoke up. "What guarantee do we have that humans will not eventually become a threat to us?" "The legends describe you as incredibly dangerous." Captain Wanho smiled sadly. "The legends are correct. We are dangerous, but not in the way you think." He walked over to where 3 young humans were sitting. In the observer section, they were children who had been born on the generation ship, representatives of the newest human generation. "We are dangerous because we will never stop trying to make things better," he said. "We are dangerous because we believe that every life is worth saving, even if it costs us everything. We are dangerous because we form emotional bonds with anyone who shows us kindness, and we will fight to protect those bonds. The three children smiled and waved at the assembled representatives. Several of the aliens waved back automatically, and Captain Wanho nodded. You see? It's already happening. We've been here for 3 months, and already you're starting to care about us. That's what makes us dangerous. We make everyone around us want to be better than they are. President Nari called for the vote. All those in favor of granting citizenship and territory to the human people? Hands, tentacles, and other appendages rose throughout the chamber. The vote was not unanimous, but it was overwhelming. 307 votes in favor, 23 against, and 15 abstentions. The motion passes, Nari announced. Welcome home, humans. The chamber erupted in applause as Captain Wanho and the other humans in the observer section were surrounded by congratulatory representatives. Nari watched the scene with satisfaction, but also with a sense of anticipation. She knew that this was just the beginning. Over the following months, humans began arriving from the New Horizon to establish their new colony. They worked alongside engineers from dozens of species to build cities that incorporated the best technology from across the galaxy. Human doctors trained with alien medical teams to prepare for the return of the ancient plague. Human teachers worked with educators from every world to share knowledge and culture. Most importantly, human children began playing with young beings from hundreds of different species. Nari often visited the new human settlement and watched, the children laughing and learning together. She saw human youngsters teaching alien children how to build impossible machines from spare parts. She saw alien children teaching human youngsters about their own cultures and traditions. 6 months after the vote, Nari received a report that made her smile. Dr. Sunwoo, who had studied the first human subjects, had submitted a formal request to join the human colony. She wanted to continue her research, but more than that, she wanted to be part of the community the humans were building. She wasn't the only one. Hundreds of beings from across the galaxy had requested permission to live and work in the human settlement. They came as scientists, engineers, teachers, and artists. They came because they wanted to be part of something new and hopeful. But the most important report came from the joint medical team working on the plague cure. Human and alien doctors had made a breakthrough that would have been impossible without cooperation between the species. They had found a way to strengthen the ancient genetic modifications without requiring the terrible sacrifice that humans had made before. It's working, Dr. Kyung told her during a video conference. The new treatment is more effective than the original cure, and it doesn't require anyone to give up their home or their future. The humans were right. Working together, we can solve problems that would be impossible alone. As Nari ended the call, she looked out the window of her office at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships were traveling between worlds, carrying messages and supplies and friendship. Human engineers were helping to build new space stations. Human teachers were sharing their knowledge with anyone who wanted to learn.